Do you feel like recalls are more prevalent now or 20, 30 years ago, or is it about the same?
You don't have to take it to the dealership. You don't have to sit in their lounge drinking their crappy coffee.
Does it tarnish the brands at all, or is it just like, okay, well, this is just business as usual?
Are we going to see more? Probably.
With this, you don't get any warning. It just explodes. All right, so Ray, it seems like the poster child, the golden boy of the domestic brands here. Well, they are now facing some problems. It seems like we have problems with recalls with Ford. We always have problems with recalls with Ram, but it seems like GM is usually avoids these kind of headlines. But now we're seeing that GM wants to join the party. We've had Toyota with the Tundras, and now we have a lot of these motors out of these GM trucks, out of the Suburbans, Tahoes that are cratering. So what they said was that these motors were throwing rods through the side of the engine block. So this is, I guess we just get to keep on talking about quality for forever.
So am I to take from what you just said that rods through engine blocks is not where we want the rods to be? We'd rather they still be connected to pistons and stuff?
Yeah, and if they're throwing a rod through the engine block, like the rod, it's going to put a hole in the side of the engine like that.
And does that tend to slow down or bring the engine to a quick and abrupt halt?
Here we go. Here's the complaints report a bearing failure that may result in either engine seizing or the connecting rod breaching. Breaching means hole through the side.
Yeah. Breaching. Yep, I like that.
Yep, and through the engine block, and there are no signs of defect before this actually happens, before your engine explodes right on the interstate, and you have a shotgun size hole through your engine block. It's not going to let you know. It's not going to show us. But a lot of times, I'm a used car dealer. I'll use the phrase with a lot of like transmissions or engines that are about to go bad, that they'll show their butt before they're actually going to go bad. With this, you don't get any warning. It just explodes.
The warning is that the car suddenly just stops moving forward because there's no longer any engine propulsion to move it forward. Interesting. How could that be construed as a safety issue?
I got a question for you. So you were in the new car space, and you were a franchise. You worked with customers, you worked with back end, everything like this.
Yeah.
So if you was there ever a situation where you had one of your vehicles that, or with GM now it's a bunch of vehicles that had some major recall or major defect, and then it was so bad that you have actually customers coming in and say, well, I don't know if I want this car because of this headline or whatever. And how do you approach that from the other side? I don't know if you have a memory of something like this that happened when you were working.
Well, when I was with Acura in the early 2000s, they were well known for having transmission issues. And, a metric poop ton of transmissions were replaced in a lot of Acuras. And do you run into customers that go, well, I don't want this car, and if I had known this, I wouldn't have bought it? And it's like, as a dealer, you look at them and you go, thank goodness you've got that factory warranty, that bumper to bumper factory warranty. And the reason they put it on cars is just for situations like this. In case something were to happen, you're covered, you're protected. So, I get it. You wouldn't have bought it if you had known this could be a problem. Well, guess what? Acura sold it without knowing that this could become a problem, and now it has, and they're doing something about it. That's the whole reason you have a warranty. You hope, the manufacturer hopes, and you as the customer hope that you never have to use the warranty, but that's what it's there for. That's the reason you get it. That's the reason it's given to you. So, yeah, I get when customers are, well, I don't want to have one of these. Well, you bought it, and the factory warranty that came with it is going to cover the problem. And so you should be thankful for that, because you could have bought a used car with no warranty, and when that car threw a rod through the engine block, you owned it. So that's how I used to handle it.
So do you feel like all these stories coming through, we have all of them from Ford, all of them from Ram, we have Toyota Tundra. Now I know the answer on Toyota Tundra, but do you feel like because it's now such a common place to have recalls, have engine failures, things like this, is it actually hurting the brand reputation? I know with Toyota it actually has, and maybe it's hurting Toyota more than it should compared to Ford, GM, and Ram because they deal with this kind of situation way more than Toyota has over the years. But does it tarnish the brands at all, or is it just like, okay, well, this is just business as usual? They're gonna mess up something, and then we're just gonna have to get it fixed.
I think it tarnishes the brands slightly, but most people are kind of aware of the fact that every new vehicle they buy comes with some type of factory warranty period, bumper to bumper factory warranty coverage. Um, and I think I might have relayed this story to you before, but I'll say it again. When I first moved to Arizona, my wife and I, we moved out there so that I could open a Golf USA golf store. I had a 3,500 square foot golf store selling golf equipment. And I was approached one day by a sales rep from a company called Mitsushiba, not Mitsubishi, but Mitsushiba. And they were a Chinese company that produced shafts, and club heads. And they were the third largest manufacturer of shafts and club heads in the world. I'd never heard of them, but they built shafts and club heads for everybody else. And they came into the store and they said, "We sell our own clubs and our own shafts, and the shafts come with a lifetime guarantee. And if a shaft ever breaks, you just send it back to us. We'll replace it." And I thought, okay, they're inexpensive. What's the worst that happens? If they break, the shafts get replaced. And if they don't break, the customers love the clubs. So I brought them into the store knowing that it had a great warranty. And that's what a new car has, a great warranty.
Yeah, so in the let's pull up another brand that I feel like it's going to fall in the category more of Toyota, where okay, so we don't see a lot of this come out of Honda. Now, recently we've had motor problems out of Honda too. Let me
Yeah.
let me pull back out because I want to talk about this. This is not something that is very common through brands like Honda and Toyota, but over the last year and a half, we've had Honda and Toyota both had major engine problems, major engine fixes that they've had to do over the last year. So while I say, and it maybe it's just a feeling of mine that Honda and Toyota don't have situations like this, maybe I'm jaded by this, just knowing that what I know from my used car experience that Honda and Toyota are really good brands. Is this something over the last few years or whatever that Honda Toyota is getting wrong too? Is this a product of, I mean, just things getting worse and they're having to make things cheaper because of the expense that's now going to have to go into it because of labor and because of how much everything costs now? Or are we just going to continue to get worse quality, even in these brands that are known for quality?
I think that possibility exists, but you also have to take into consideration the percentage of vehicles affected. The GM probe was for 870 some thousand engines. The Honda thing is for what, 290,000. It's a much smaller percentage of vehicles, and over the course of their histories, there have been fewer recalls of major concern for most of your Japanese brands than in comparison to most of your American brands, for whatever reason. Um, So are we going to see more? Probably, because they're always looking at new materials for producing the parts. They're supposed to be stronger. Maybe they're not. Um, but it's the percentage of vehicles impacted that I think is what's important here. And if it's I mean, Toyota hasn't had a lot of engine issues over their history in this country that I can really remember. The 100,000 engines that they're going to have to replace on the Tundras, that's a pretty big deal. But they produced close to 11 million new vehicles last year worldwide, and to have to replace 100,000 engines out of 11 million, that's a pretty low percentage, isn't it?
All right, new channel right here. So if you haven't already, please like, subscribe. It's free for you, and it really helps us out. Yes, I also want to. We can talk about the brands that have the most recalls and the least amount of recalls, and it's gonna boil down to the amount of vehicles that are affected too, just like what you were saying. But you can look at some, and I'm surprised to not see Ram on here. I thought Ram recently overtook Ford for the most amount of recalls. Maybe this is the wrong
Stellantis did. Stellantis did for the year. FCA did. So if it, I forget where Zach gets that information from. But yeah, well, Chrysler is part of Stellantis.
Chrysler here, yeah.
Yeah. Tesla has the least recalls. Does it? Their recalls are typically over the air fixes. So, I don't even consider them recalls in the sense that you have to take the vehicle to the dealership.
I guess what defines a recall then?
Well, where there's an issue that the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration says needs to be addressed by the manufacturer on behalf of the customer. Okay, so that's a recall. Now, if it's a software recall and it can be handled over the air while the vehicle's sitting in your driveway, that's not a that is like the least pain in the ass recall you can ever have, because you don't have to take it to the dealership. You don't have to sit in their lounge drinking their crappy coffee. You're not subject to any of that. It's just over the air. They send the information and the software is updated. So that's different than like, okay, we need to inspect your engine and we need to replace this, that, or the other thing. So I guess there's different levels, especially for convenience and inconvenience when it comes to a recall. But yes, last year Stellantis did top Ford for the number of recalls. Now, I'm not sure which brand actually impacted more vehicles, even though the number of recalls might have been greater for the Stellantis brands. I'm not sure that it necessarily impacted more vehicles than the Ford recalls did. But, we've been subject to recalls for years and years and years and years. I mean, there were issues Ford had back in, what was it, the 70s and 80s with automatic transmission recalls, where you'd put it in park, but it really didn't go in park. It just kind of sort of went into reverse and stayed there, and cars were rolling down driveways and things like that. That went on for years. That impacted millions upon millions of vehicles when they finally did something about it. So there's been recalls that have impact. Takata airbags. I mean, how many? 50, 60, 70 million vehicles? It's crazy, because every manufacturer was using Takata airbags at one time.
Right.
So, recalls. It's for me, the issue for most people is the inconvenience factor. I've had cars that have been recalled. Whatever.
One that sticks out to me, I think this was like early in when I started to become a used car dealer, but it was like the 90s F-150s. I can't remember which version, which body style F-150 it was, but they had the cruise control that would never turn off. You turn off the truck, but the cruise control was still active, and it could cause a fire in your engine because this system was still open or whatever. And I remember a few houses that were actually burned down because of this. And that was the first big recall I remember, at least when I was getting into to the car market. Do you feel like recalls are more prevalent now or 20, 30 years ago, or is it about the same?
I think we're probably more aware of them now. The ability to communicate the fact that there's a recall is greater today than it was in the past. I mean, in the past, it relied primarily on U.S. Postal Service. They would send you a letter stating that your car has been impacted by a vehicle recall and you need to make arrangements with your dealer. Well, today it could be the form of a text or an announcement on social media somewhere. So I think the ability to get the word out is a lot greater today than it was 40 years ago or 50 years ago when there were recalls. That's why it was always so important that when we did a retail delivery report with the manufacturer, that the information was accurate and correct. The mailing address, phone numbers, all that needed to be accurate. Today, they still get that information, but they get it along with a cell phone number and an email address. So it makes it easier to communicate when a recall happens. I personally, I was driving a mini hardtop for a while, and there was an issue where from the air conditioning, the condensate line didn't drain properly, and so they had to replace something. It was behind the dashboard. I'll never forget when they took, I mean, literally they took everything apart, and it was like, I remember taking a picture of the interior of my car with seats out and dashboards out and steering wheels, and texting to my family, this is when the rattles get installed. Because they took everything out, and what are the odds that they can put it all back together again and there's no rattle? I don't know how they did it, but there was no rattle when they put it all back together. But
they probably put new plastic clips in there when they did. They had to, if they were going to pull all that stuff out.
Yeah, well, one would hope, but I mean, there's got to be a clip somewhere that you forget. And
yeah,
but it was a pain in the ass. I mean, it was a 2 or 3 day process, but for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. I just took a demo home. For the average customer, it becomes untenable. I mean, I had to show up at that place for work anyway. Most customers didn't. It was sort of kind of out of their way to stop there on their way to work so that they could get another car from us while we were futzing around with their car.
While you're a what?
Futzing around.
Okay. All right. I heard something else.
I can't help your hearing.
So there are some situations too where they can these manufacturers can be aware that there's an issue, but they won't even fix it. There was it was like an older model, like Ford Escape or whatever, that they had a known issue with this thing, and Ford was like, "Yeah, there is a problem, and we don't know how to fix it." So it's just there.
That's not a particularly good answer, now, is it? That sounds like a Yugo, which was, most people wouldn't remember, but I believe that was, as I described the Yugo, that was the Bic click of cars. It was the world's first disposable automobile. When it died, you just got out of it, you hailed a cab, and you went home, and you just left it wherever it died because it was never going to run again. and I think Ford has to do a slightly better job than that. I'm just
Yeah,
thinking. Yeah.
that's interesting. I had
Now,
a buddy.
what was the recall for Honda?
For Honda, it was we
It's a
got off
braking issue
topic
or
because
something?
yeah. So it was over the emergency braking system, and I think that it would just go
Engage
into
while you were driving?
it would just actually engage. One thing that's interesting. This is off topic here though, but
Yeah.
like this the assisted driving stuff, my wife and I deal with this on a daily basis with our two cars. My Tesla is a little bit better than her Honda Odyssey,
Yeah.
but if that Honda Odyssey detects anything remotely like just close to possibly running into the front end of that car, it
Yes.
will put on brakes very harshly.
Yes.
And I think there's something wrong with the system because it's happened a couple times to me where there hasn't been anything in front of the car and it goes ahead and tries to put on the brakes. And my wife's sister has a Traverse, I believe, and it has slammed on brakes in the middle of the interstate with nothing around her. So this is something that I'm surprised we don't hear more about, and it might be something a similar situation with Honda here, where these automatic systems are engaging when there's no reason for them to actually engage.
I know when Zach and I drove cross country 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whenever it was, and we were in one of my it was a mini Clubman, and it had the cruise control, and it could whatever it could tell how close the cars were in front and automatically slow down when needed to. And we'd be driving along the interstate, and all of a sudden, you'd be doing like 90 miles an hour, and the next thing you know, it's hitting some form of brakes and slowing down, and it's like there's still nothing in front of us. We might have gone up a hill, maybe it pointed to the sky, and it confused the system. But that was the only issue that we ever had, and I think it's a relatively common issue, apparently, for a lot of cars that brakes suddenly engage, especially when you're using cruise control on a highway, and it's like there's nobody closer to me now than what is it seeing that I don't know, the real human eye doesn't see. And that just pointed out to me that to rely on some of these systems, I think is really, really foolish. Because if it can't tell that there really is a car in front of you or not, how the hell's it going to do the rest of the stuff it needs to do, especially when vehicles are in full self-driving mode? Scares the hell out of me personally.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I had a trial of full self driving in my Tesla. Elon just graced the owners with a free month, and I tried it a couple times. Man, it wasn't even close to right. It was trying to skip lanes. It would speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. It would not recognize when the light was turning green, so it would just sit there. I don't. It's I used it maybe 2 or 3 times and never again. I was going to buy it
Yeah.
to try it out, maybe do a video on it, but after using that trial, I'm out. I'm not doing it.
And if that doesn't scare you about what like robo taxis are going to be, I mean, when we've seen situations in San Francisco where robo taxis just stop in the middle of a of an intersection for no reason at all, and you can't get them to move, and uh, or the police are tracking down a driverless vehicle. It just I I don't know. I want a person inside that car that's living and breathing, that's sitting behind a steering wheel, and I know that they might not react as quickly as maybe some of the computers in the car, but I still want that person there to be able to put his foot on the brake, or put his foot on the gas, or I don't know, signal and pull over to the right. not just stop in the middle of an intersection and then, I don't know, not going anywhere now, ever. I don't. Ray Shefska, personally do not feel comfortable with the concept of robo taxis and self-driving cars. I just do not. That's just me.
My thing is they're going to have to figure out how to program profiling into these systems, because I can tell you, I'm in North Carolina. If I pull up to a four-way stop, and this big Ram lifted Ford truck with a big Ram lifted truck with the windows down, smoke billowing out of the side of the window, hanging their flag of choice out of the whatever belief they have that day, and that flag that they're flying out the back of their truck bed. I can tell you, he don't give a damn about that stop sign. So it doesn't matter if it's my turn or if it's his turn. He's going, and Tesla, they're going to have to figure this out, because they're going to have to actually profile these drivers to be able to anticipate what they're going to do. Or if I'm on the interstate and there's a 1989 Cadillac DeVille going on the interstate, and the Tesla is just going to need to know that car's probably going to go about 20 miles under, and I'm going to have to go around it. So.
You know, I don't know that I have the same level of confidence that they're going to figure it out as perhaps maybe you do. But then again, I am pretty close to double your age, so maybe that's why I lack that confidence. And I know there will be people in the chat when I say this, that the computers can be smarter than the humans and can react more quickly. I get all that. You know, the computers that are driving these cars probably haven't had nearly as many accidents as human beings have had over the years driving cars. I mean, because we have proven as a species that we don't particularly do a really good job of driving a car. You know, and that might be because we're flicking our cigarette ashes out the window, or we're turning up the music that we're playing, whatever it may be. But Ray Shefska, personally, I feel better knowing that there's some form of human being sitting in the driver's seat. Even if they're texting and driving, I feel better about that. Maybe not. I just feel better knowing that there's a human being sitting in the driver's seat that could take over control of a vehicle, as opposed to relying on the software and computer systems that are built into it. Just me. Just
in my opinion.